My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, stop what you're doing right now. What you're about to hear could completely transform your relationship with Jesus in the Eucharist. Pope John Paul II, one of the greatest saints of our time, left us a solemn warning. 3 things. 3 things we must always do in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament. These aren't suggestions. These aren't optional practices. These are spiritual necessities, and far too many Catholics, even devout ones, are forgetting them. Listen carefully, because when the Holy Father used the word always, he meant it. Always. Every single time. No exceptions. I'm asking you to stay with me until the very end, because the 3rd thing I'm going to reveal is so powerful that John Paul II himself said that without it, our adoration risks being completely empty. Empty. Do you understand the gravity of that? A pope who spent countless hours on his knees before the tabernacle is warning us that we can be there physically and receive nothing spiritually. And in the world we live in today, with all this noise, with all these distractions, with all this spiritual warfare, we need these 3 truths more than ever before. I know many of you feel it. Something has been lost. The faith doesn't seem as alive as it once was. Church attendance is declining. Young people are walking away. Even among believers, there's a lukewarmness that's alarming. But John Paul II gave us the solution. And today we're going to discover it together. Do you remember how Pope John Paul II approached the Blessed Sacrament? Before any speech, before greeting anyone, before conducting any official business, where did he go? Straight to the chapel. Straight to Jesus in the Eucharist. He would kneel down and the whole world would wait. Cardinals, heads of state, massive crowds, everyone waited. Why? Because the Holy Father knew that without that intimate encounter with Jesus in the Eucharist, nothing else mattered. Everything else was secondary. I've read testimonies from those who accompanied him. They tell us that sometimes he would remain motionless, like a statue, for 20, 30, even 40 minutes. He wasn't praying out loud. He wasn't reciting the rosary at that moment. He was doing something deeper. He was doing these 3 things I'm about to reveal to you. And you know what's extraordinary? After those moments before the Blessed Sacrament, John Paul II would emerge transformed. His eyes would shine with a different light. His words carried supernatural power. It was as if he had drawn directly from the source. And that source, my dear friends, is available to all of us, in every Catholic church, in every chapel where there's a tabernacle. But we must know how to approach it, how John Paul II taught us. Many of you have written to me. You say, I go to church but I feel nothing. I pray, but it seems like my words hit the ceiling and fall back down. What am I doing wrong? And I understand that pain. I understand that spiritual thirst that goes unquenched. We live in difficult times, times of tremendous spiritual confusion. We're bombarded constantly by secular messages, by relativism, by materialism, by voices telling us that truth doesn't exist, that all religions are the same, that what matters is just being a good person. Our children are leaving the church. Our grandchildren don't understand why we believe what we believe. The culture is hostile to Christianity in ways we never imagined. And sometimes we walk into church, we kneel before the Blessed Sacrament, and nothing. Our hearts remain cold. Our minds remain restless. Our souls remain unchanged. But John Paul II knew why this happens, and he left us the answer. The 3 things we must always do. Always. Not sometimes. Not when we feel like it. Not when it's convenient. Always. And I promise you, if you apply these teachings, your spiritual life will explode with grace. This isn't me saying it. This is the experience of millions of Catholics who have followed the Holy Father's counsel. So, are you ready? Open your hearts. What you're about to hear comes directly from the teaching of one of the Church's greatest modern saints. The first thing Pope John Paul II told us to always do in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament is this: create interior silence. Listen to me carefully. He didn't say exterior silence. He said interior silence. Do you understand the difference? We can be in a completely silent church, in absolute quiet, but inside us there's total chaos. Thoughts racing, worries screaming, memories tormenting us, anxieties overwhelming us. John Paul II said this is the first obstacle to receiving grace. Interior noise. The Holy Father explained that Jesus in the Eucharist speaks with the gentlest voice, a voice of infinite love. But it's a whispered voice. He doesn't shout. He doesn't force his way in. He whispers to the heart. And if there's too much noise inside us, how can we possibly hear him? It's impossible. It would be like trying to hear a delicate melody in the middle of a rock concert. That's why the Pope insisted, first of all, interior silence. But how do we do this? In a world that bombards us constantly? In a culture that glorifies busyness and noise? In lives that are packed with problems and responsibilities? John Paul II gave us a simple but incredibly powerful method. He said, when you enter before the blessed sacrament, before you say any prayer, before you ask for any grace, breathe. Breathe deeply 3 times, and with each breath, let go of a burden. With the first breath, let go of material worries, the bills you need to pay, the health issue you're dealing with, the problems at work or at home. Imagine placing them at the foot of the tabernacle. They don't disappear, but you're entrusting them to Jesus. With the second breath, let go of worries about others, your children, your grandchildren, that sick person you're praying for, those family conflict. Again, place them at Jesus' feet. You don't stop loving them, but you stop carrying them on your shoulders in that moment. With the third breath, let go of yourself, your sins, your failures, your unworthiness, your shame, your regrets. Acknowledge them, but don't identify with them anymore. Offer them to the mercy that's present right there in the tabernacle. And only after these 3 breaths, after creating this space of interior silence, do you begin to pray. Or rather, you begin to listen. Because you see, my dear friends, we're accustomed to talking to God, to asking Him for things, to reciting formulas. But John Paul II reminds us that in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, the most important thing is to listen. God wants to speak to us. He has things to tell us. He has consolations to give us. He has direction to provide us. But if we don't create silence, how can He? The Holy Father used to say that in his most difficult moments, when the weight of the pontificate seemed crushing, when the forces of evil were attacking the Church from every side, when he felt the burden of the world on his shoulders, he would go before the blessed sacrament and create this interior silence. And from that silence, he received answers. He received strength. He received that peace that the world cannot give. And do you know what happens when we don't create this silence? John Paul II was very clear about this. We risk turning adoration into a mechanical exercise. We risk leaving the Church exactly as we entered, without transformation, without grace, without that deep joy that should characterize someone who has encountered Jesus. Think about this for a moment. How many times have we gone to church, recited beautiful prayers, maybe even cried, but then walking out realized that nothing had changed inside us? Same anxieties, same fears, same emptiness, same struggles. John Paul II said this is the sign that we haven't created interior silence. We haven't made space for Jesus to work. We've been physically present but spiritually absent. And in today's world, this is even more critical. Think about how many distractions we have. Our phones constantly buzzing, our minds running through to-do lists, our hearts heavy with the news cycle, our souls weighed down by the culture's messages. All of this creates a wall between us and the Blessed Sacrament. But here's the good news. John Paul II assured us that if we're faithful in this first thing, if we consistently practice creating this interior silence, it becomes easier. Like a muscle that's being trained. At first, it's incredibly difficult. Thoughts invade constantly. Distractions assault us from every side. Our minds wander after just seconds, but with consistent practice, interior silence becomes more natural. It becomes our default state before the blessed sacrament. And when that happens, my dear brothers and sisters, miracles begin. I'm not necessarily talking about physical miracles, though John Paul II witnessed many of those. I'm talking about miracles of the soul, hardened hearts that soften, long-held resentments that dissolve, deep-seated fears that vanish, addictions that lose their power, relationships that heal. This is the power of interior silence in the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. This first practice is absolutely foundational. Without it, the other two things won't work as powerfully. But with it, everything changes. So I'm asking you, right now, to commit to this. The next time you're before the Blessed Sacrament, practice those 3 breaths. Create that interior silence, and watch what God does. Now let's move to the second thing Pope John Paul II tells us to always do in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament. And this one is so simple you might think, of course, that's obvious. Yet, my dear friends, it's the one we forget most easily. The second thing is, keep your gaze fixed on the Eucharist. Your gaze fixed. Not wandering. Not distracted. Not looking around. Fixed. The Holy Father was almost obsessive about this concept. He said, "The eyes of the body must reflect the eyes of the soul." What does this mean? It means that when we're before the Blessed Sacrament, where we place our physical eyes indicates where our heart truly is. If we're looking around, if we're observing the church decorations, if we're checking the time, if we're staring at our hands or at our shoes, our hearts aren't truly there with Jesus. John Paul II told a story from his youth. When he was still Karol Wojtyla, a young priest full of zeal but also full of questions, one day after an adoration that he found particularly difficult and distracted, he confided in his spiritual director. He said, "Father, I can't concentrate. My mind goes everywhere. I can't keep focus." And the old priest told him something that changed his life forever. "Karol, when you're before the Blessed Sacrament, look at the host like a shipwrecked man looks at the shore. Like a thirsty man looks at a fountain. Like a lover looks at his beloved. Do you understand? This isn't just any look. This is a gaze of vital necessity, of burning desire, of consuming love, of desperate need." And John Paul II learned this lesson so well that it became his defining characteristic. Those who saw him in adoration were struck by precisely this. His eyes never left the monstrance. Never. Hours could pass. He could be exhausted to the point of barely standing. But his eyes remained fixed there. Why? Because he knew a profound truth. When we look at Jesus in the Eucharist, he looks at us, and in that mutual gaze, transformation happens. St. John in his first letter tells us, "We know that when he appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is." See? Seeing transforms. The gaze transforms. And John Paul II applied this principle with incredible intensity. But I want to be honest with you. Keeping your gaze fixed on the Eucharist is difficult. Very difficult. Our eyes get tired. We want to look elsewhere. Our attention drifts. It's natural. We're human. But the Holy Father encouraged us never to give up. He said, "Every time you notice your gaze has wandered elsewhere, gently bring it back to the host. Without judging yourself. Without getting discouraged. Just gently bring it back. It's like training a small child. With patience. With love. With consistency. And gradually, that gaze becomes more stable, deeper, more contemplative, more penetrating." John Paul II also explained what happens spiritually when we keep our gaze fixed on the Blessed Sacrament. He said that our eyes are the windows of the soul. And when those windows are wide open toward Jesus in the Eucharist, he enters. He enters with his light. He enters with his peace. He enters with his strength. He enters with his love. But if the windows are closed, if we're looking elsewhere, how can he enter? It's like closing the door on someone who's knocking. Jesus is there, truly present in the blessed sacrament. Body, blood, soul, and divinity. Everything of him is there. The fullness of God incarnate is present in that host. But he respects our freedom. He doesn't force the door open. He waits for us to open it, and we open it with our gaze. With that fixed, desirous, needy gaze. There's also another critically important aspect that John Paul II emphasized. The fixed gaze on the Eucharist is powerful spiritual protection. You know, my dear brothers and sisters, we live in a world full of spiritual dangers. The Holy Father knew this very well. He said that the devil is more active today than ever before. And one of his primary tactics is distraction, getting us to look everywhere except at Jesus. If we're always with our eyes on our phones, on the news, on our problems, on worldly concerns, the enemy has won. He's distracted us from the most important thing. But when we keep our gaze fixed on Jesus in the Eucharist, we create a spiritual barrier. It's as if we place ourselves under God's protective gaze. And there, evil cannot touch us, cannot infiltrate, cannot steal our peace, cannot destroy our faith. John Paul II used to say that in the darkest moments of his pontificate, when he felt the oppression of dark forces, when he sensed spiritual attacks, when the weight of evil in the world seemed overwhelming, he would go before the blessed sacrament and fix his gaze on the host for hours. And from that gaze, he received supernatural strength, mental clarity, a capacity for discernment that went beyond his natural abilities, a courage that wasn't his own. This is available to all of us. It's not reserved for popes or canonized saints. It's for every Catholic who humbly places themselves before the blessed sacrament with a fixed gaze. And I want to tell you something else beautiful that John Paul II taught. When we keep our gaze fixed on the Eucharist, not only do we look at Jesus, but we begin to see with his eyes. What does this mean? It means our perspective changes. Problems that seemed insurmountable shrink to proper size. People who have hurt us we see with more compassion and understanding. Confusing situations become clearer. Our priorities realign. Why? Because we're no longer looking with our limited human eyes, clouded by sin and selfishness. We're looking with the eyes of Christ. This is an immense grace. And you know when this becomes particularly powerful? When we combine the first thing with the second. Interior silence plus fixed gaze. Think about it. Inside us, deep silence. Outside, eyes fixed on Jesus in the Eucharist. In this condition, we are completely open to grace, completely vulnerable to God's love, completely available to His will, completely positioned for transformation. And John Paul II assured us that in these moments, God works miracles. Silent miracles, hidden miracles, but real miracles. Miracles that change us from the inside out. I read a testimony from a woman in Ireland, a simple woman from a small parish. She said that she had been Catholic her whole life, but had never really experienced Jesus. Faith was just tradition, just routine, just going through the motions. Then one day, she heard about this teaching from John Paul II. She decided to try it. She went to her parish church, created interior silence with the 3 breaths, and then fixed her gaze on the tabernacle. She said, "I don't know how to explain what happened, but after about 10 minutes of just looking, really looking, something broke inside me. I suddenly knew, with absolute certainty, that Jesus was really there. Not just believed it, knew it. And He was looking back at me with such love that I started crying and couldn't stop." That woman's life was completely transformed. She went from lukewarm to on fire. All because she practiced these first 2 things. Interior silence and fixed gaze. You see? The example and teaching of John Paul II continues to transform lives. But we must put it into practice. We must have the courage to actually do what he taught. To create that silence. To fix that gaze. I know for many of you, it's not easy to get to church every day. I know there are physical limitations. I know life is busy. But let me tell you something important. It's not the quantity of time that matters most. It's the quality. It's the intensity. John Paul II said, "Better 5 minutes of true adoration with interior silence and fixed gaze than 2 hours of distraction." Do you understand? God doesn't look at the clock. He looks at the heart. And if you go before the blessed sacrament even for just a few minutes, but in those minutes you truly create silence inside and keep your gaze fixed on Jesus, you're doing exactly what the Holy Father asked us to do. Always. Every time. Without exception. And now I want you to reflect on something. These first two things we've covered, interior silence and fixed gaze, are already incredibly powerful. Many saints built their entire spiritual lives on just these practices. But John Paul II warned us that there's a third thing. And this third thing is the most important of all. It's what gives meaning to the other two. It's what transforms adoration from a spiritual exercise into an encounter of love. It's what opens the floodgates of grace. And I'm about to reveal it to you. And now here we are. The third thing Pope John Paul II tells us to always do in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament. Prepare your hearts, because this is the most demanding. It's the most radical. But it's also the one that bears the most abundant fruit. The third thing is total surrender of the heart. Total surrender. Not partial. Not conditional. Not holding anything back. Total. John Paul II explained that when we place ourselves before Jesus in the Eucharist, after creating interior silence, after fixing our gaze on Him, we must make a precise act of will. An act of complete abandonment. We must say with our entire being, "Lord, I am yours. All of me is yours. Take my life. Take my will. Take my plans. Take my fears. Take my dreams. Take my past. Take my future. Take everything. I offer myself completely to you." Do you feel what an act of courage this is? What an act of faith. What an act of love. The Holy Father said this is the most important moment of adoration. Because without this total surrender, we can create silence, we can look at the host, but we remain somehow separate. We remain ourselves with our agendas, our reservations, our areas of life we want to keep for ourselves. But Jesus in the Eucharist calls us to something more. He calls us to total communion. And communion means complete union. Without barriers. Without walls. Without, yes, but. John Paul II lived this in a radical way. Those who knew him well recount that every morning, during his private Mass after communion, he would remain kneeling for an extraordinarily long time. And in that time, he always did the same thing. He offered everything. His day. His strength. His decisions. His life. His suffering. His joy. Everything. And it wasn't a mechanical formula. It was an act of love renewed every single day. Like a spouse who every morning says to his bride, "I love you. I give myself to you." This is what Jesus desires from us before the Blessed Sacrament. This total gift of self. And do you know what happens when we make this total surrender of the heart? John Paul II explained it with beautiful words. He said, "When you give yourself completely to Jesus, He gives Himself completely to you. And in this mutual exchange of gifts, transformation happens. You are no longer the same. He lives in you, and you live in Him. This is the mystical union the saints spoke of. This is the mystical life. This is what the great saints experienced. And John Paul II assured us it's not reserved for a few chosen souls. It's for everyone. It's for you who are listening to me now. It's for every person who has the courage to make this total surrender before the Blessed Sacrament. But I must be honest with you. This third thing is difficult. It's the most difficult of the three. Because it requires dying to ourselves. It requires letting go of control. It requires trusting completely. And we humans love control. We love feeling that we're the ones deciding. That we're in charge of our lives. That we're the captains of our souls. But John Paul II reminds us that this is an illusion. We were never in control. God has always been in control. And when we finally recognize this, when we finally surrender, when we finally offer everything, that's when real life begins. The abundant life, the full life, the life we were created for. And I want to tell you a story the Holy Father himself loved to tell. It was the story of a Polish nun, a woman from humble origins, who worked in the kitchen of a convent. She wasn't educated. She didn't have important roles. She wasn't anyone famous or special by worldly standards, but she understood this secret of total surrender. Every morning, before starting her work, she would go before the tabernacle. And there, in just a few minutes, she would do the three things: interior silence, fixed gaze, total surrender. And she would say, "Jesus, today I offer you my hands that will wash dishes. I offer you my feet that will walk back and forth in the kitchen. I offer you my tiredness. I offer you my obscurity. I offer you everything. Make of me what you will." And this simple nun, through this daily act, became a saint. Not in the history books, not with spectacular miracles, but in reality. Because whoever met her, whoever saw her work, whoever received food prepared by her hands, said, "There's something different about her. There's a joy. There's a peace. There's a presence." It was the presence of Jesus living in her through that daily total surrender. And John Paul II said, "This is possible for everyone. Whatever your state in life, whatever your work, whatever your age, whatever your circumstances." In fact, I want to tell you something particular for those of you who have lived many years. For those of you who are older, John Paul II had a special message precisely for you. He said that elderly people, people who have lived long lives, have an advantage in total surrender. Why? Because they have fewer illusions. They've seen that life is short. They've seen that worldly things pass away. They've seen that only God remains. And therefore they can offer themselves with fewer reservations, with fewer fears, with more freedom. The Holy Father said, "Elderly people who make total surrender before the blessed sacrament are an incredible spiritual power. They sustain the Church with their prayer more than we can imagine. They are warriors on the front lines of spiritual battle." Do you hear that dignity? That importance? You're not set aside. You're not useless. You're not a burden. If you make this total surrender before the blessed sacrament, you are pillars. You are foundations. You are spiritual warriors of the first order. And John Paul II counted on you. He counted on your prayers. He counted on your surrender. He knew the Church needs this prayer of the faithful more than anything else. But how do we concretely make this total surrender? John Paul II gave us simple words. Complicated formulas aren't necessary. Long prayers aren't necessary. It's enough to say from the depths of your heart, "Jesus, I am yours. Take everything." Or, "Lord, I abandon myself to you. Do with me what you will." Or simply, "Here I am. All yours." The important thing isn't the words. The important thing is the intention. The important thing is that it's true, that it's sincere, that it's total. And John Paul II added practical advice. He said, when you make this surrender, concretely imagine placing in Jesus' hands everything that worries you. Children who have left the faith? Place them in Jesus' hands. That illness you're afraid of? Place it in Jesus' hands. That difficult family situation? Place it in Jesus' hands. That sin you can't seem to overcome? Place it in Jesus' hands. That person who hurt you deeply? Place them in Jesus' hands. That financial worry? Place it in Jesus' hands. And after placing everything, imagine placing yourself as well. Your life, your past, your present, your future, your very self, everything in Jesus' hands. And then let go. Truly let go. Don't take back control. Don't say, "Okay, Jesus, I'll take it from here." No. Leave it in His hands. Trust. Abandon. Surrender totally. And you see, my dear brothers and sisters, this is the most difficult act but also the most liberating. Because when we offer everything, when we completely abandon ourselves, we stop carrying burdens we cannot carry. We stop worrying about things we cannot control. We stop being anxious about a future that doesn't belong to us. And in place of anxiety comes peace. In place of worry comes trust. In place of fear comes love. This was John Paul II's daily experience. And this is the experience he wants for each one of us. But I must tell you something important. Total surrender isn't done once and for all. It's done always. Every time we're before the Blessed Sacrament. Every single time. Because you see, we human beings have a tendency to take back control. We surrender everything to Jesus in the morning, and by afternoon we've taken it all back. We put the worries back on our shoulders. We start wanting to control again. We start planning according to our will. It's normal. It's human. But that's why John Paul II insisted, always, with every adoration, with every visit to the Blessed Sacrament, renew the total surrender. Do it again, and again, and again. Because each time you do it, you become a little more free, a little more transformed, a little more holy, a little more His. And now I want to share with you something deeply personal that John Paul II revealed near the end of his life. When he was already very sick, when Parkinson's disease had debilitated him, when he could barely speak, when his body was failing him publicly, a cardinal asked him, "Holy Father, how do you bear all this? How do you still have that peace in your eyes? How do you continue?" And John Paul II, with great difficulty, answered, "Every morning before the Blessed Sacrament, I offer this illness too. I offer this weakness. I offer this humiliation of the body that no longer obeys me. I offer this suffering. And when I offer, Jesus takes. And when Jesus takes, I am free. I am at peace. I am His." Do you understand the power of these words? A man who was suffering in a terrible way, who had become almost a living relic before the eyes of the entire world, who could have felt humiliated, frustrated, angry, bitter, instead was at peace. Why? Because he had made total surrender. Even of that. Even of the suffering. Even of the weakness. Even of the public decline. Everything. This is authentic Christianity, my dear friends. This is following Christ to the very end. And John Paul II showed us how it's done. Not with theories. Not with beautiful words only. But with his life, with his example, with those countless hours spent before the Blessed Sacrament practicing these three things. Always. So now let's recap, because it's important that this is engraved on your hearts. The three things Pope John Paul II tells us to always do in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament are: first thing, interior silence, creating that space within us where Jesus can speak. Second thing, fixed gaze on the Eucharist, keeping the eyes of body and soul fixed on Jesus present in the sacrament. Third thing, total surrender of the heart, giving everything, without reservations, without conditions, completely. These three things, always, every single time. They're not optional. They're not suggestions for advanced souls only. They're spiritual necessities for every Catholic. And John Paul II warns us, without these three things, we risk turning adoration into something empty, mechanical, ineffective, a religious activity that doesn't actually connect us with God. But with these three things, adoration becomes what it should be, a transforming encounter with the living Jesus, a moment of overflowing grace, an experience that changes everything, a meeting that sets our souls on fire. And I want to be very direct with you now. I know many of you are struggling with faith in a world that seems to have lost God, struggling with loneliness because those around you don't understand these things anymore, struggling with fear of the future because you see where the world is heading, struggling perhaps with a sense of irrelevance because the culture tells you your time has passed, struggling with doubt because the noise of the world is so loud. But John Paul II would tell you, you are precious, you are important, and your prayer before the Blessed Sacrament, done with these three things, has immense power. It can change situations, it can convert hearts, It can save souls. Never underestimate the power of your adoration. You are more important to God's plan than you can possibly imagine. And this is absolutely true. The Church has always taught that the prayers of the faithful, especially those made before the blessed sacrament, sustain the entire world. They're like invisible pillars that prevent evil from completely prevailing. They're like spiritual dams that hold back the forces of destruction. You, when you pray like this, are these pillars, are these dams. Even if no one sees it, even if no one knows, even if no one thanks you, God knows. And for Him, that's what counts. John Paul II loved to repeat a phrase of Jesus. When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. The Father sees. He sees every effort you make to create interior silence amidst life's chaos. He sees every moment you keep your gaze fixed on the Eucharist despite tiredness. He sees every total surrender of heart you make despite fear. And He will reward you, not always as you expect, not always in visible ways, not always immediately, but He will reward you with peace, with joy, with interior strength, with that deep certainty that nothing and no one can take from you, the certainty of being loved by God, the certainty that your life matters, the certainty that you're not alone, the certainty that heaven is real and waiting for you. So what will you do after hearing this message? Will you let these words slip away like so many others? Or will you take them seriously? Will you go before the blessed sacrament and try? Will you make the effort to create that interior silence? Will you keep your gaze fixed even when it's difficult? Will you make that total surrender even when it's frightening? John Paul II is watching us from heaven, and he's praying for us, praying that we'll take his teachings seriously, praying that we won't forget them, praying that we'll live them. And I encourage you, I actually beg you, do it. Try it. Go before the blessed sacrament, even if it's difficult, even if you're tired, even if your body aches, even if you feel unworthy. Go. And there, do these three things: interior silence, fixed gaze, total surrender, and you will see. You'll see that your life will change. You'll see that you'll receive unexpected graces. You'll see that Jesus is truly there, alive, present, waiting for you, loving you, wanting to transform you, longing to give Himself to you completely. My dear brothers and sisters, we're coming to the end of our time together. But I hope for you it's just a beginning. The beginning of a new way of being before the blessed sacrament. The beginning of deeper, truer, more transforming adoration. The beginning of an authentic relationship with Jesus in the Eucharist. John Paul II left us a treasure. These three things, always, in every adoration, in every visit to the tabernacle, in every moment before Jesus in the Eucharist. Don't forget them. Write them on your hearts. Practice them faithfully, and you will see abundant fruit in your spiritual life. You will see transformation. You will see miracles. You will see the power of God working in you. I bless you. I embrace you spiritually. And I pray for each one of you. I pray that these words will bear fruit. I pray that your adoration will become deeper and deeper. I pray that you'll experience that joy, that peace, that love that John Paul II experienced every day before the blessed sacrament. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. Jesus is waiting for you in the tabernacle. Mary is accompanying you. John Paul II is praying for you from heaven. And we are all united, all brothers and sisters, all part of this wonderful family that is the Church. Go in peace. Go with courage. Go before the blessed sacrament. And there, always do these three things. Always. Every single time. May God bless you abundantly. May He fill you with every grace. May He make you saints. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.